आप देख रहे हैं फानीलिटिक्स। आज की एक और एपिसोड और मेरे साथ एक और स्पेशल गेस्ट हैं। मेरे जो गेस्ट हैं वो बहुत ही स्पेशल हैं क्योंकि इन्होंने हम सबको एज अ पाकिस्तानी प्राउड कराया है। अगर मैं थोड़ा सा आपको बताऊं तो मेरे साथ हैं मुजाहिद रसूल भाई, और आपने ईयू में एज अ ब्लू बुक ट्रेनी इंटर्नशिप एज अ फर्स्ट पाकिस्तानी जिसको ये इंटर्नशिप मिली है, तो ये हम सब के लिए बहुत ही प्राउड वाली बात है। और आप यूरोपियन यूनियन की जो ट्रेनी ब्लू बुक ट्रेनी है उसमें एग्रीकल्चर एनवायरमेंटल एनालिस्ट हैं। तो ये डिटेल्स तो मैं उनसे पूछूंगा। तो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल आई वुड लाइक टू थैंक यू कि आपने टाइम निकाला अपनी इस मसरूफ, मुझे पता है कितना मुश्किल होता है यहाँ पे टाइम निकालना। और सबसे पहले आप कैसे हैं, और पहला क्वेश्चन भी आपसे साथ ही कर लूं कि आप, मैं जो भी मेरे साथ गेस्ट आते हैं मैं उनसे उनकी जर्नी पूछता हूँ, तो आप थोड़ी सी अगर अपनी जर्नी बताएं कि आपने कहाँ से पढ़ा और क्या किया।
Very right. Thank you very much, Irfan, for the question as well and for having me here. And so, when it comes to me, so I am from Pakistan and I studied my bachelor's and master's in Pakistan, and I did my studies in agricultural sciences. So, it's very, as I was saying, it's very practical and very niche field. And then I started working for the State Bank in Pakistan. And this is also a question people usually ask me, like how studying agriculture can take you to the central bank is because in the State Bank and all the banking industry, they also have this portfolio where they bring the credit and the loans for the farmers and the farming sector. So for that, State Bank, what used to do is hire the people who have agriculture background. So that's how I ended up there. So, but when I was working in the State Bank, it's quite an enriching experience. But in the central bank, you come across a lot of economics and finance because that's what the main business is. And I was just only having the experience of agricultural sciences. So I was very good in bringing the technical side of expertise in agriculture, but I was always feeling challenged when it comes to economics and other concepts. And somehow I also realized that there is this huge gap of combining these both of these fields, especially in context of Pakistan. And I wanted to study more economics, and I fall for the economics, you can say. And whenever I am applying for the different courses, so I was considering this that I want to study more economics. So then I got into this program in Belgium. It's called International Masters in Rural Development. It's from the Ghent University in Belgium, and it's under the Erasmus Mundus scholarship. And I got lucky that I got the scholarship as well. So as a result, what I had to do, I studied in Europe in different countries, which included in Belgium, in Slovakia, in France, in Italy, and in South Africa as well. So after studying in all these universities, then you graduate at the end by writing thesis. So when I was studying in these different countries, so of course we have background in Pakistan and we see the things through the Pakistani lens. But when you are in Europe, and not only in one country, you are moving around constantly and you are seeing the Europe is also not just one country. It's like every country has different context and different perspective to see things. Then I also wanted to learn the European way of looking at the agriculture or economics. As a result, I came across this traineeship, which is called the Blue Book Traineeship in the European Commission. But as we were discussing, it's specially reserved only for the EU nationals. So even within the EU, there are different countries who have the quota that these number of trainees they will take. And but you can also, as a non-EU, can apply, but there are exceptions that you can make it or not. We will discuss these in detail. And then I happened to got selected. I feel like I was lucky that I got in. So I was working in the European Commission in the Directorate General of Agriculture and Rural Development in the Environmental Sustainability Unit of Common Agriculture Policy. It's very different area. And then I realized that I happened to be the first Pakistani who got in, and that's why I wanted to have a discussion with you. So maybe with your channel, we can be able to aspire different Pakistanis. That there are so many more opportunities we can explore while we are on our journey to study here. Thank you.
Your like journey is really amazing because, for example, like some people who just think like, as I was thinking to ask you as the next question, that so many people they think like, or you have just scope it, either you go for IT or these kind of like main field, because as you have your like bachelor's in agriculture studies, so which is like not very common, but still you are very successful, and it's very proud moment for us that you are first Pakistani who's working in the EU in the Blue Book Traineeship. Then like for example, what's your message for all those people, like for example, who even they want to study, they are I have many friends, they are very interested in like studying, for example, about the international relations, but they don't study, they just go in the IT because they think like it's very much like in the scope, or what do you want to say about them?
No, no, this is very right question you asked, and it happens a lot. And I guess it has been happening over the decades and decades. People actually like to go more into the fields which are more there are more opportunities to get jobs into, and and right now we can see that, for example, from the previous 2 decades, IT and computer science is a kind of a field where people would really like to go in and they get better jobs. There are more opportunities, and there is no harm in it, and people should go. But now, when the artificial intelligence is taking over, the computers have been, becoming more efficient than humans in many ways. That the jobs which humans were doing, and they are going to take over by the computers. So we should think in a way that what are the different things which are going to survive or which are going to excel even in the future. So for me, from my perspective, the future is very interdisciplinary. It's not that, if you are studying computer sciences and you are good at it, coding or programming, that's the only thing you should know. So you can be multidisciplinary. You can learn computer, you can learn programming, but you can also learn economics, and you can combine these two, and then you will be an asset which can be more efficient than many people in the job which you're going to do. And that's my perspective. And especially in case of the context of Pakistan, of course, we have a growing IT sector, but when we look at the bigger picture of the Pakistan's GDP, it comes from the agriculture sector, and that's an area which is need to be tapped a lot. And it has been, I mean, historically it has been left alone in terms of all these progress which Pakistan has been making. Maybe they are going in more industrialization, in more in services sector, or maybe in IT and computer sciences, but in all those transitions, the agriculture sector has always been left behind in many ways. And so what is going to happen, Irfan, in future is like there are going to be people who are going to come who have studied computer, who have studied economics, who have studied all these different fields, but they are going to combine their skills into the agriculture sector. And that's where the magic is going to happen. And we can already see that the agri-tech entrepreneurs are coming into major equation, maybe not that much in Pakistan, but in case of India and all these world, where the agriculture technology is coming together and then bringing the sector out of poverty. And you imagine how much impact one sector can have on the life of people, that in Pakistan, almost 40% of people are directly or indirectly involved in agriculture. And 40% people of Pakistan, you can imagine it's like more than 150 million of people in Pakistan. So that's my kind of idea that, of course, I am in an agriculture field, and people, what they would like to do, they can be do very agriculture work, maybe do the field, and that's important. I'm not saying nothing is important, but question is how can you make the bigger impact out of it? And that's where I feel like I wanted to combine the economics and the finance side of it with the agriculture sector, that in future we can create a bigger chain of impact than just a one tiny impact. And but having said that, all these individual impacts, the people are doing their job, they are very important. But again, the question comes, how can I create a better impact? And that's my story, and that's what I wanted to do.
You're right. Like for example, everything is interconnected. Even in this globalized world, you can see like for example, agriculture is our like backbone, as you said, rightly mentioned. But then things are like interconnected. Like for example, your automobile industry is connected to agriculture because they're taking
Yeah,
all the food to the cities, and then you have markets. You need the business. Like so, you cannot in this globalized world, you cannot just stuck yourself with that. Either you're gonna study IT or you're gonna just be because you have scope in everything. If you are like, and you're best example for it that while studying agriculture, you have worked with this field in Pakistan, and now you are working in like Europe. So it's like in diverse field, like it's not just in Pakistan. You can work with this field, and right away, if I come to like with this, like as we are talking about this, your role. So what are like your main responsibilities, or what are the things you do, or what are the things you learn here?
okay. And just to add to your point, what you Irfan mentioned as well, like for example, 2 days ago, the Nobel Prize for the chemistry they announced by the Swedish Academy, and the Nobel Prize of chemistry actually gone to those scientists who were computer scientists, so they
Yeah.
can predict the structures of proteins based on the computer and artificial intelligence tools. So you can see where the world is heading is more of combining the different fields together and to be more efficient in it. And again, there is no doubt that in Pakistan's context, agriculture is too important. And one of the factor which I mentioned to be in the European Commission is like you also learn the different way of doing agriculture, and different way of doing policy making for the agriculture. And I happen to see like what Pakistan's agriculture policy is doing now. That's what Europe has been doing until 80s, and then from 80s onward they started a different transition, and now they're at a very different stage, and we are exactly like following the path. So we can say in our policy making we are maybe in the trajectory, but we are like 40 years behind them. So how you can catch up all these ideas? So what you can do if you come to learn their way of stuff, how they how we don't have to do everything. We don't have to invent the wheel. We can learn from the other people. And I guess that's where for example, my experience, it was very important for me that I do not happen to have the lens of Pakistan's policy making, but I also could see the policy making in the European Commission. And now I'll come back to your question, how we do it. For example, if you are going to be training in the European Commission, how your day to day would look
Yeah.
like. So, for example, it's always, of course, it's gonna be different from the DG you are in. For example, in your case, you are more studying in European studies, and if you are going to work in more international relations field of study. In my case, I was working in the DG Agriculture, and our work and my unit was Environmental Sustainability Unit. अब इन्वायरमेंटल सस्टेनेबिलिटी यूनिट के अंदर हम लोग जो है ना, पूरे यूरोप के अंदर there's a big policy which is called common agriculture policy. So they have three different main parts, and one part of the policy is environmental sustainability, because they feel like that the agriculture is a biggest contributor to the greenhouse gas emissions. So how they can make the agriculture more sustainable. And that's where I was working on. So usually when you're a trainee, you will feel like, okay, I'm a trainee and I don't have to be taken seriously. But I'll that might amaze you or surprise you that when you're a trainee in the European Commission, they really take you seriously. They'll just give you 4 or 5 days of onboarding, that this is all these things they will familiarize you with the teams and the operators and the processes, but they will expect you to bring something to the table. They, for example, in my case, हम लोग हर रोज every week हमारी एक unit meeting होती है, and they were taking me with the unit meeting, and they will ask you a question. Okay, what do you think about this policy? What we are working on right now, and you are not expecting it because you feel like you're a trainee and you don't have to contribute, but it is different. Maybe that's why they bring Blue Book trainees twice a year. Why? They feel like they need new ideas. They need new generation. They can might be able to think differently. And for us, so of course we were working, so when you're in one DG, then you happen to be, for example, in my DG we were 13 14 trainees, and when you are coming together, there is onboarding together, then there are so many things which you do together. For example, you're going for the coffees every morning, you're going for the lunch every day, you're going for the drinks after the office. And other than that, that's your own DG. But then the overall, all the trainees in the different DGs, there are like almost Irfan 1,000 trainees which come every session. And that's a lot of trainees. And once these trainees come into Brussels, they all are very open minded because they are new, they are young, they are open to ideas, they are open to the people, to making new relations, to knowing people. And I guess that's what makes this experience more enriching, that other than just learning the technical side of the things, you make a lot of friends, you make a lot of colleagues. And there are many traditions in the Blue Book traineeship, that every Thursday, for example, there is a one square in front of the Parliament, European Parliament in Brussels. It's called Place Luxembourg, Place Lux, we call it. Every Thursday after office, all the trainees will be there. They will be there for the drinks, they will be chatting, and you will see the whole square, it is filled with the trainees. So you will not only learn the technical side of your traineeship, but you also, this experience teaches you, not only teaches you the Brussels, but it also teaches you individual European countries. You meet people from those countries you would not imagine to meet. So that's the most important part is like you see the countries, the European countries through the people. And after the end of this traineeship, I can assure you, you will have friends in almost all these countries where in the European countries. So that's one of the best about this traineeship.
Yeah, it's like amazing to just, for example, I'm also a student of European studies, so it's like so amazing to learn because some of my friends, they were also in the Brussels in the last semester. So they
Hmm.
also said similar experiences. They made so many new friends, and it was like very good environment for networking, as you mentioned. And if you talked about like really important point, like for example, when you learn things here, the way they do it, then you are a really good asset for Pakistan as well. So if at some stage you go to Pakistan, you can help our like country to grow and the way they do things. So ये काफी important है और आप तो बल्कि हमारे मुल्क का असासा है जिस तरह इमरान खान नहीं
नहीं नहीं
कर अब
नहीं
किसी
इसी
स्टेज
इसी
पे
के अंदर ना I will also add one thing. For example, Irfan, so I was working in the DG Agriculture. So DG Agriculture, they of course they work for the Europe, but they also work with the other countries. For example, there is one unit which is particularly working on the geographical indication work. What is that? Like they will give each product an indication that this product belong to this country. So, for example, right now they have a big case which is going on between Pakistan and India about the basmati, right?
okay
So for example, when you are there, when you are inside these institutions, so when we joined in, so our DG they published each of our trainees profile, and I mentioned that I'm from Pakistan, and so what happened? Like those people who were working on this particular portfolio about Pakistan, they sent me, they asked me if I can meet them for coffee to learn from us, to learn from our perspective, and what is basmati for us and how it Pakistan claims it. So what happened is like when you are inside these institutions and you are actually working with the people who are working on these big issues, they will be able to see your perspective, and that helps Pakistan in many ways. So, for example, if I'm talking to them and I'm sharing our perspective, other than the papers and the research which has been submitted, and this is very informal discussion, but this helps them and this helps Pakistan in a bigger picture. And what I also feel like there was one area which I feel there's a big gap in Brussels in Pakistan, and which I'm really interested in writing a small article about is Pakistan uh, the foreign policy in Brussels is not very active. That's what I have realized. Other than the different peers countries which are active here, Pakistan is not very active, and that's where they lack. For example, there has been a recent issue with Pakistan's export of basmati in Europe. So can you imagine like 75% of the basmati which comes into Europe, it comes from Pakistan. So it's like that big a market for Pakistan. But now there has been a one challenge where they are going to stop the import from Pakistan. And now the people who are working in the Brussels for Pakistani government, they're running around and they're trying to figure out, they're trying to find people to ask for how we can resolve this. And that's the gap which Pakistan needs to fill. There are no think tanks, there are no consultancy companies, there are no Pakistani experts which are here which can actually bridge this gap between the Pakistan and the European Union. And when we talk about European Union, it's not just the Brussels; it's like the whole country. So I feel like this is an area where we need more people to be exposed to the Brussels experience, to Brussels politics. For example, I'm just a student and I'm doing it by my own. But for example, the foreign services and all these people, they should have more exchange with the European institution, especially the one they are very closely working with. And that's how I guess they can make more people to people connection, and then those people to people connection actually materialize. However, what Pakistan choose to do all the time is send just the mangoes and stuff. And okay, I mean, you send mangoes, but that's not working anymore in this institution, I can assure you. So this is my experience. As you rightly mentioned, we need the bridges which can connect the Pakistan with the Brussels. And usually Pakistanis are very active in, for example, in UK, in States, in all those countries which Pakistanis are very well established. But I feel like there's a big gap which is needed to be filled between Brussels and Pakistan. And yeah, you were rightly
you
pointed
you
that out.
you are exactly right. Like this is a thing not many people think about it. जब लोग सोचते हैं इस बारे में वो बस EU को इस तरह सोच लेते हैं कि जब आप देखें तो EU is the economic superpower. Even EU is like, we were studying one of the subject like which says like the EU is like the bigger power than China and the USA. तो उतनी बड़ी पावर को हम इतना इजीली जाने देते हैं। और जिस तरह जो आपने बासमती राइस वाली बात की है, बहुत सारे इवन कि मुझे भी पता नहीं था इस बात का। तो ये मतलब एक बहुत बड़ी मार्केट है हमारे लिए, लेकिन इसको हम एक किस्म का जाया कर रहे हैं। और बहुत सारे लोग, जिस तरह आपने राइटली पॉइंट किया है कि उन लोगों को इस फील्ड में पढ़ना चाहिए। और आपने जिस तरह कहा कि जब आप पढ़ने जाते हैं तो हम जैसे लोगों की या उस रीजन के लोगों की इधर लिटरली उनको जरूरत है, क्योंकि एक जो गैप क्रिएट हो गया है उसको फिल करने के लिए इनको कुछ लोग चाहिए। तो ये तो मतलब हमारी गवर्नमेंट को इस चीज के बारे में सोचना चाहिए।
बिल्कुल सोचना चाहिए। एंड इसके अंदर एक बड़ी अहम बात इरफान आपने की है कि हमारे पाकिस्तान के अंदर पीपल टेंड टू कंफ्यूज कर जाते हैं कि यार European Union with the America or the UK. They confuse that it's just one Western big. However, we need to think in a very different way. The US is a different context, UK is a different market, and the European Union is a totally different market. और हमारे लोगों को इस चीज का पता ही नहीं है. So there was a very famous movie director. He once mentioned that if you will cross the barrier of subtitles, then you will be exposed to huge creative movies across the world. For example, we just only watch the our local language or the English movies, right? Because we left all this that art which is in a different language. And if we can just cross that barrier, same goes for the European Union. I feel like there is a barrier of language, and that's where Pakistanis are not trying to cross that barrier. अगर हम लोग ये जो बैरियर है ना लैंग्वेज का, कि इंग्लिश तो सबने सीख ली, लेकिन क्या हम फ्रेंच, क्या हम जर्मन, ये पाकिस्तान के अंदर इतनी ज्यादा कॉमन क्यों नहीं है? दे शुड बी। और अगर हम ये लैंग्वेज बैरियर क्रॉस कर लें तो देन वी वुड बी एबल टू have a better connection and better people to people exchanges between these countries, and that adds to the real economic changes. For example, we see how India is dominating because of the power of the human capital they have across all these countries, right? So they established these contexts. Now they are considered to be sitting all the top positions, right? That's what we have to do, and that's which I feel like in my experience, in my very little experience, I feel like which Pakistan can do better.
यू आर राइट। लाइक यहाँ पे जब हम स्वीडन में भी देखते हैं तो मेरे जितने भी मतलब ऑल ओवर द यूरोप ही होता है कि अब आप फॉरेन लैंग्वेजेस में आपको जर्मन, स्पेनिश और फ्रेंच स्कूल में एज लैंग्वेज सिखाई जाती है। और पाकिस्तान में हम फॉरेन लैंग्वेज जब सीख भी रहे हैं तो अगर आपको इस चीज से मसला है कि हमने फॉरेन लैंग्वेज नहीं सीखनी, तो आप इंग्लिश भी तो सीख रहे हैं ना। तो उसके साथ अगर आप
True.
स्पेनिश या जर्मन या फ्रेंच ऐड कर लें तो एक किस्म का, इवन के चाइनीज भी अगर आप ऐड कर लें, चाइना भी आपके नेबर में है और बहुत बड़ी हुआ है। तो मतलब इसमें सिर्फ ये नहीं है कि आप स्पेसिफिक यूरोप की लैंग्वेज सीखें, आप कोई भी
Yeah.
एडिशनल लैंग्वेज ऐड करें। तो ये तो अभी तक तो हम थोड़ा सा क्रिटिकल थे अपने रोल पे, लेकिन अब थोड़ा सा क्रिटिकल रोल पे आते हैं ईयू के। तो बेसिकली ईयू अपने आप को आइडेंटिफाई करता है एज अ नॉर्मेटिव पावर। थोड़ा सा ये
Mhm.
पॉलिटिकल इशू भी हो सकता है, तो इस पे अगर हम बात करें तो ईयू अपने आप को आइडेंटिफाई करता है नॉर्मेटिव पावर। और अगर मैं अपने जो लोग देख रहे हैं उनके लिए सिंपल वर्ड में बताऊं तो नॉर्मेटिव पावर ये होती है कि ईयू अपने आप को कहता है कि हम दुनिया की वो पावर है, जब हम दुनिया के दूसरे मुल्कों से डील करते हैं तो हम प्रमोट करते हैं डेमोक्रेसी को, ह्यूमन राइट्स को, रूल ऑफ लॉ को। लेकिन जब हम ईयू के एक्शंस देखते हैं, जिसकी वजह से जिस गैप की हमने पहले बात की वो गैप और बढ़ जाता है। फॉर एग्जांपल अगर मैं पाकिस्तान के केस की बात करूं तो 1999 से लेके 2018 तक ईयू अपने पाकिस्तान में जब भी इलेक्शन होते थे उनके लिए एक डेलीगेशन भेजता था जो इलेक्शन को ऑब्जर्व करता था, और वो फिर एक रिपोर्ट पब्लिश अपने ऑन पे करते थे। लेकिन जब
Yeah.
2024 के इलेक्शन हुए, आई डोंट वांट टू गो इन द पॉलिटिक्स, जो भी हुआ, लेकिन वो सबको पहले पता था, एक कॉन्टेक्स्ट में हो रहे थे, सबको पता था कि इलेक्शन रिग्ड होने जा रहे हैं। लेकिन ईयू ने इस बार ये किया कि अपना स्मॉलेस्ट डेलीगेशन एवर भेजा, और उसके बाद वो रिपोर्ट पब्लिश करने के बजाय उन्होंने रिपोर्ट पाकिस्तानी अथॉरिटीज को दे दी, मतलब उन लोगों को दे दी जिनके खिलाफ ही वो एक किस्म की इन्वेस्टिगेशन थी। तो जब ईयू के लोग इस तरह के एक्शन देखते हैं तो फिर आपको नहीं लगता कि इससे और गैप क्रिएट हो जाता है? या फिर आपका इस बारे में क्या कहना? आई जस्ट वांट टू नो योर लाइक थॉट्स इफ यू आर कंफर्टेबल टू शेयर इट।
Okay, that's very sensitive question for sure. Uh, अब इसके अंदर ना इरफान, I will be speaking with my experience, right? I haven't been to the US, I haven't been to the UK, and I haven't been to those places. I have my experience in Europe, and I will like to answer this question very European way. And so when we talk about the European Union as a normative power, so I would say I believe on that in my personal experience that they are normative power. They tend to tend to bring these values, these fundamental human values, to the different kind of agreements. For example, they have this GSP plus status for Pakistan, and they attach it with different requirements. And my main requirements in those is the minorities protection in Pakistan and all these things. And I feel like this is not something bad, in Pakistan. I mean, all these things, Irfan, when I'm being here, all these countries, I feel like they are very relevant. It's not there is a one, absolute, and then all these. There is relevance. I mean, in our culture, there is these challenges which exist, and we see them very often. And somehow, I feel like they are becoming more and more extreme, right? And so, what the EU tends to do is to do these deal with these countries, and there is for sure there is a power differences. When there are negotiations, there are power differences, but when you see through these lens, so they try to push these agenda of democracy, of human rights. So that's from my perspective. Now when we come towards the other side of, for example, the example you mentioned, they have been very actively engaged in Pakistan's political process. And I happened to attend one seminar 2 weeks ago where Pakistani journalists were visiting Brussels, and the European Commission's main center, which is on the foreign policy and which are the Pakistan desk for the European Commission, they were the one organizing this. And there was a discussion, very uncomfortable discussion as well, as you rightly pointed. Sometimes the European Union can push their agenda in order to, achieve their certain objectives. But at the same time, to this example, the representative of the European Union, they were very clear about it. Because of the security challenges, they felt they cannot send uh, bigger people. But having said that, I really feel like the mention you about the report that they give it to the authorities, these are the critical question, and these should be raised. And you were the one who just raised it, because I don't have a bigger knowledge about it, so I won't be able to comment it about it. But from my perspective, I feel like because I have the exposure of Pakistan and the European Union, right? And when I'm trying to compare these, and so I feel like the Europe is normative power, but we need to keep in mind that it is impossible to just think about it in one small picture. Of course, European Union is a part of bigger politics. It's a part of planetary politics. It's a part of bigger North Atlantic bloc. And so we will understand this, but from my small experience, I feel like they try to do this in favorable way for the countries.
इट मेक सेंस जो आप बात कर रहे हैं, बिल्कुल आपकी बात सही है। और मैं जब अभी हम लेक्चर्स लेते हैं तो ऑलमोस्ट एवरी लेक्चर जब हम पढ़ते हैं तो हम हमें टीचर्स या जो भी प्रोफेसर होते हैं तो हमें इस नॉर्मेटिव पावर के बारे में पढ़ाया जाता है। और बहुत अच्छी चीज़ है कि यहाँ पे स्टूडेंट्स को बताया जाता है कि आप ये चीज़ों की आपकी प्रायोरिटीज होनी चाहिए। लेकिन ये चीज़ मैं अपने टीचर्स के सामने भी, जो भी आप भी मतलब एक्सपीरियंस है, तो जो भी मेरे सामने एक्सपीरियंस आता है तो मुझसे क्रिटिकल क्वेश्चन पूछ लेता हूँ ना। तो और उसके साथ साथ आपकी बात सही है कि एक रियलिस्ट वर्ल्ड में हम रह रहे हैं जहाँ पे मतलब ये मुल्क, जाहिर सी बात है, उन्होंने एट द एंड अपना इंटरेस्ट भी देखना है, वो
Yeah.
चीजें साथ। लेकिन ये इटसेल्फ यूके एकेडेमिया में ये बहुत बड़ी डिबेट चल भी रही है कि शुड वी इवन क्लेम एज अ नॉर्मेटिव पावर, शुड वी कीप इट एज आवर फर्स्ट प्रायोरिटी। आप इसकी, आपकी ये नॉर्म्स और वैल्यूज हैं, लेकिन आपकी किस हद तक है, कितनी आपकी प्रायोरिटी होनी चाहिए, उस पर डिबेट चल रही है। तो आपका पॉइंट बिल्कुल सही है। तो अगर थोड़ा सा इस पॉइंट से मूव करें, तो अभी जिस तरह के यूरोप में कुछ लोगों को पता भी है और कुछ लोगों को नहीं पता, आपको यकीन पता होगा जिस तरह के फार राइट का राइज हो रहा है, मतलब कि वो एंटी इमिग्रेंट पार्टीज जो इवन कि जर्मनी में एएफडी की बहुत ज्यादा उनको वोट पड़े हैं, यूरोपियन पार्लियामेंट में वो ग्रुप्स जो फार राइट ग्रुप्स हैं उनको ज्यादा वोट पड़े हैं पहले से ज्यादा। उसके बाद फिर आप देखें ऑस्ट्रिया में गवर्नमेंट बन गई है फार राइट की। तो एक यूरोप में एक फार राइट की, इवन की स्वीडिश जो गवर्नमेंट है करंट, वो भी सोशल डेमोक्रेट्स, वो भी काफी ज्यादा फार राइट की तरफ लीन करते हैं। तो आप सबको इस, अगर आप इसमें कंफर्टेबल है इस बारे में बात करने में, कि आपको क्या फैक्टर्स लगते हैं कि पूरे यूरोप में जो एक वेव चल गई है एकदम से तो नहीं कह सकते, चलो कुछ सालों से जो चल गई है, तो उसके पीछे आपको क्या फैक्टर लगते हैं? इमिग्रेंट्स की भी आपको लगता है कुछ गलती है, या अगर आप उस पर इजीली बात कर सकें?
Mhm. So, Irfan, I would say the rise of this nationalistic ideology, it's not only restricted only to the Europe, for sure. It has been in the different part of the world as well. We see that happening in the South Asia. We saw that in India. India, we saw that in Pakistan, and we saw that in states, all these countries, they are experiencing this extreme nationalistic politics being coming into equation. But when I think about the European way, for example, why it is happening in Europe, so of course there are factors which connect all these different far right polities in different countries in Europe. There could be common agenda, maybe it is anti-immigration, could be. But I feel like all these rise in far right parties in different countries because of different reasons. For example, when I look at the rise of far right in Netherlands, so it's their main agenda is has been anti-Islam, or particular. When we see that rise of far right in the Germany, their agenda has been more associated with the economic condition of their country, that their country is a bit suffering right now, and that's where the far right is trying to fill the gap by maybe bringing the energy problem, by bringing all these challenge. But of course, in the Germany there is a big uh, influence of the immigration, which happened almost a decade ago from Syria and all these countries which were war-torn. The people actually came into this country. And when I look at, for example, in France, so that has been in France, to my experience, it has also been a part of immigration that has been rising this, but also it's more of the economic condition which has been driving. And but one factor which I see which connected all these far right in almost 1 year before is is the worsening economic conditions of farmers. That was the one agenda which I could really connect because it's related to my politics. So what happened is, because of the Green Deal in 2019, so there was a rise of green parties, right? They bring the green politics. So they were very ambitious into achieving green ambitions. As a result, they translated all their laws and policies into more ambitious. Okay, what happened? Somehow these achieving environmental objective and making the environmental growth, economic growth has not been able to go hand in hand. Has been a compromise in both of these. So what happened is, so people, those people who are being affected by this change in economic, they started questioning this idea that, okay, they are taking away from us our way of doing life, our way of doing, especially for example from farmers, their way of doing agriculture. They feel like we have been doing this, we know how to do this. Someone in the Brussels sitting in an office, how they can tell us what we do? And that's where it becomes a more joint. So we see the protest in Poland, in Germany, in Netherlands, in France, in all these countries, and they are coming to Brussels. So this gives a kind of momentum. So I feel like there are different factors, but of course one of them is immigration, which has impacted the Europe in last 10 years in a different way, especially the Germany and Austria. And and but the worsening economic condition, along with the achievement, trying to achieve environmental objective while the rest of the world seems to don't care. So the people start questioning, why are we the one who are just trying to fill this responsibility while the others are not? So as a result, they feel helpless. They are economically impoverished, and that has inflation has been going in rise in Europe while the salaries are not going up. So I feel like these somehow complement to the this politics, which is going a bit more far right. And yeah, but further, if you will, Irfan, see, there are certain political parties, they are a bit far right. For example, in Italy, they are far right, but they are far right, but they still are within the system. They are in the European Parliament. They try to change the system from within. However, there are few far right parties which are very ultra far right, and people even don't want to make a coalition with them. So I feel like there has been a far upbringing of the far right, that's for sure, but it has not been up to that level that it is going to question the unity of the European Union. And I feel like even there are far right a rise in government, but they also share the sentiment of being united against the war, against the economic downturns. So, I mean, we cannot answer it like, that this is the only one reason. We just have to break it down into pieces, and then maybe we will be able to answer this question. So I hope it makes sense for you.
You are right, and it makes sense. Also, like you cannot just completely rely on one thing. For example, as you rightly mentioned, for example, if we see the patterns of the priorities of the EU countries, so for example, the richer countries are more lean towards the environment, and the poor countries are more lean towards the, for example, employment and reducing the inflation. So it also depends on which country's context you're talking about.
True.
That's completely. But at the end, like when we see, because the reason I'm asking this question is because at the end it somehow relates to us. For example, in case of Sweden, as you mentioned, in the Germany the context is more economical, or in France it's like, in the Netherlands it's like more like anti-Islam or Islamophobic content. But in Sweden it's like crime, so they say like the crime has increased in cities like Stockholm, that they blame the immigrants for it. But at the end, like when you generalize one thing, for example, if you say all the immigrants are like this, then there is no distinction, either that person is refugee, or it's like me who is studying here, or it's like you who is working
True.
here. Then it becomes a problem for us. Then when we are living here, we face through the eyes, because when you see the voting pattern, then you can see the people are like voting on these ideas. Then it's so difficult to discriminate like which person is either involved in some criminal activity. So as like person who is living in the Europe, which I can relate to the last question, that do you face any kind of, as when you live in the society, do you face any, like of course in the Belgium context it would be maybe less, but if you go to other European countries where maybe it's more rising, so do you face any kind of like discrimination or racism?
Mhm. Okay, so just to add to the first point you were mentioning, and it's exactly like that. When there is a there is a maybe a small thing which is being done, then the people tend to make a bigger generic narrative out of it, and that narrative could be very, problematic. So I feel like that the far right is also associated with this manipulation, with the misinformation, and disinformation. They see one case, and then they make a big thing out of it. So for example, there was one study in which there was politicians who were claiming that the immigrants have been involved in more and more crimes. However, when the police they released their data report, they claim that the people who are from the immigrant background, they are less likely to be arrested, as compared to the percentage of the population, than those who were there. So sometimes it's also the disinformation and I feel like that's where the far right is more active. And one point, Irfan, is also like there is also this protest vote, because people don't agree to the socialist or the center right which are in the government, and in order to just protest, maybe they are not agreed with the far right now, but they've cast the vote as a protest vote, that we are giving them vote because you are unable to do this. So there are differences. And to come to your question, I feel like, to my experience as of now, I haven't came across any such incident where I feel like, I'm uh, being kept at a second stage or anything. That's for sure. And that's my whole experience of almost 2 years. And I have been welcome. And this is also, for example, this was my idea from day one at Fan. For example, I felt like when Pakistanis or the people from our countries, they come here, they either tend to be with together, they try to make small groups, either they just to be only with each other. Of course, that makes it easier for them because it's convenience, it's the language, everything. But it's more important for us to expose ourselves to the people who are from there, right? And this is from the day one I did, is like I never differentiated someone between that, he's from Pakistan or from India, or he's from European. No, for us the base was always the same forever. And as a result, I can tell you, now I have my friends, my colleagues, they are from everywhere, all these countries. And I would say I have maybe 10% Pakistani colleagues or friends, and the 90% who are from Europe or different background. So because there is no barrier in your mindset, and I feel like when you are open to ideas, people tend to be open to ideas, and that's what I always advise to the people who and the students who are coming here is, you have to learn the way of where you are. You cannot expect to be part of society in the part of the social circles when you are not ready to be, for example, open minded. You can be try not you are not trying to learn language, at least you should put some effort, and that will really help you. For example, we can still keep our values, but still we can be with the people. For example, when we go out after the office, we go for the drinks. So everyone, of course, we know that the culture here is they go for the drinks or the beers. We can be with them. We can order our Coca-Cola or our apple juice or something, but that should not. And people, they don't make this as a barrier for us, and we don't make this a barrier for us. And I really feel like this is the point where Pakistanis need to really work on to break this barrier, that we are going to be open. We are going to open to ideas, to new friendships, to new people, to new networking. And then we can actually excel where we are. And I feel like that's what happened in UK or in the US. Pakistanis are very successful. Because they are second or third generation there, they don't feel themselves different. So as a result, you put yourself out there. You maybe run for elections, you are equally trying to be contribute, and you don't feel less of yourself in any way. And that really gives you momentum. And I also feel like, for example, when I was applying for this traineeship, as I was telling you, it's not easy. For example, out of 1,000, there were only 10 non-EU trainees. So the ratio is very low. But what makes me, confident is like, I don't feel myself any different from others. I put my equal effort. And you will make it. So that's what I feel is, I don't feel any kind of differences in society. But having said that, Irfan, we cannot say that it doesn't exist. We have heard stories, we know from people, and again, it's relative. As you mentioned, in Belgium, it might be less. In other countries, it could be more. But from my experience, I have been lucky, and I feel like I haven't been exposed. And I have great friends who are from here, from European countries, and amazing people.
And it's like very good. Alhamdulillah, it's nothing happened to you, and we pray that it don't happen
Yeah.
to you. And you're right, like it's one of the problem of our people. Like they don't integrate in the society. Most of the people, if you ask them, they want like citizenship in these countries. They want like, but they don't want to be like they don't want to learn the language. For this is the one of the reason. For example, in Sweden, they are talking about bringing this law where if you need a PR, like permanent resident, you need to have some basic knowledge of the Swedish, which makes sense. Like you are becoming the part of the society and you don't want to learn their language, which don't make sense to me. And it's really important that you should integrate in the society. Of course, if you came here, otherwise, what's the point of coming here? You can be in Pakistan
Yeah.
with Pakistanis.
Yeah.
So you came here.
True, true. That's exactly the mindset I have had, exactly, fun.
So it's like amazing. And the last question, I already took your so much time, but the last question was very like similar to the point you made, that I was thinking like, for example, you are a senior, so many students who study abroad, they can be in either any of the field, they can be in IT or they can be in like our field, international relations, or they can be any. Is there any advice which you want other than like if you want to add something, then this like integration that you want to give them to be a better or to be more successful like you?
Okay, I won't say, we are any successful less or more than anyone. But what I really suggest to anyone, especially the students who are coming here to study, is I give them advice: study. Of course, they want to work as well. They want to, but what happen is you get dragged into work so much that it compromise your studies. And as a result, you are in only in that circle where you are just, working and working and not focusing on your study. As a result, you graduate, of course, but then you are unable to equally participate or maybe get a right job which you deserve, right? Because you haven't been paying attention during your studies time. So I feel like instead of just coming here and only working, of course you should work if you can, but limited hours. But then really put your effort into studies, and then after the study, try to be in those jobs which are white collar jobs. So then you can really see the difference. Because if we are just gonna be here and we are just gonna do our simple jobs and trying to earn some money, just graduate and maybe go back. Okay, but that's not the bigger picture. The main thing is, if you are able to contribute into this society in a way. For example, I always believe, Irfan, it's not the money you make, it's like the how you make it. We can make the same amount of money by doing any other job, but it's like you can make the same amount of money, but in a very different setting of circumstances, maybe in a very good policy position, or maybe in a different position powers, right? And these are the things which you need to do, not for yourself, but also for maybe your country. In future, if you are working on one think tank here, which is based in Brussels, and you are, maybe at some point in 10 years, you are at their highest position, and then you can really contribute to your country as well in many ways. So I feel like, when you come here, please study. Just don't take it as कि यार मैं बाहर आ गया हूँ बस यही चाहिए था. खाली बाहर आने के लिए नहीं पढ़ना यार.
आप बिल्कुल सही कह रहे हैं, आपकी बात को मैं सेकंड कह रहा हूँ, क्योंकि जब स्टूडेंट्स आते हैं और वो इवन के डिलीवरी जॉब्स करते हैं, तो उसमें वो जब कन्वर्ट करते हैं, पाकिस्तानी हमारी करेंसी बहुत वीक है, तो उनको एकदम से खुशी होती है कि यार हम इतने ज़्यादा पैसे कमा रहे हैं, तो फिर वो
True.
बड़ी पिक्चर को भूल जाते हैं। वो फिर
Yeah.
जब जो सामने हो, जो नहीं, वो एक दफ़ा ही मुर्गी से सारे सोने के अंडे निकाल दो, तो वो फिर बड़ी पिक्चर को
तो
आप अगर अपनी फील्ड में, बहुत सारे लोगों की अच्छी अच्छी डिग्रीज होती हैं जो मैंने स्वीडन में लिटरली देखे हैं, अच्छी अच्छी फील्ड में एडमिशन लेते हैं, लेकिन वो अपनी स्टडीज छोड़ देते हैं। इसी वजह से स्वीडन ने अब यहाँ पे बेसिकली आपका लॉ है कि आप 30 क्रेडिट्स करें अपनी डिग्री के, और आप उस अपनी डिग्री को छोड़ के अपना वर्क परमिट में करवा लें। तो वो वक्त ही वो अपनी आते हैं, एक सेमेस्टर भी नहीं करते, छोड़ के, आपकी बात बिल्कुल सही, पढ़ाई छोड़ के वर्क परमिट में चले जाते हैं। आपको पीआर तो मिल जाती है अगर आप
ओके.
4 साल लगा लें पीआर में, लेकिन ये है कि आपको आपकी अपनी फील्ड जिसमें आपने फॉर एग्जांपल बैचलर्स किया है पाकिस्तान में, आपने अपनी इन्वेस्टमेंट की है, आप यहाँ पे पैसे लगा के आए हैं, तो आपको मे भी 2 साल बाद डिग्री के बाद आपको ज्यादा अच्छी जॉब मिल जाए, लेकिन वो
या.
शॉर्ट टर्म देखते हैं और वो वक्त ही अपनी पढ़ाई 30 क्रेडिट्स के बाद छोड़, और वो इसके लिए भी अब स्वीडन लॉ को सख्त करने जा रहा है कि जो स्टूडेंट 30 क्रेडिट के बाद अपनी
सी.
डिग्री छोड़ देते हैं, तो इसीलिए अब वो वीजा रेशो भी काफी खराब हो गई है स्वीडन की, और वो कुछ इन स्टूडेंट्स की वजह से हुई है जो यहाँ पे 30 क्रेडिट्स करते हैं और अपनी डिग्री छोड़ देते हैं। तो आपकी बात
या.
बिल्कुल सही है, अगर आप लोग पढ़ें तो आप में भी अपनी फील्ड में जाएं, और इवन के यूरोप में बहुत सारी कंट्रीज हैं जो प्रेफर करती हैं कि उनको स्किल्ड वर्कर चाहिए। फॉर एग्जांपल जर्मनी में आपको इतनी बड़ी शॉर्टेज है स्किल्ड वर्कर की, पूरी दुनिया से वो बुला रहे हैं लोगों को। तो आई हैव ऑलरेडी टेकन योर सो मच टाइम, थैंक यू सो मच मुजाहिद भाई।
नहीं.
इट it was really great, and we learned a lot from you, and maybe at some stage we can invite you again for some discussions. It was really, I'm really thankful to you कि आपने टाइम निकाला, और मेरा छोटा सा प्लेटफॉर्म है, कोई इतने ज्यादा कुछ लोग नहीं, लेकिन आपने टाइम निकाला, तो थैंक यू सो मच।
I really feel like what matters the most is the content, the topic you're working on, rather than the audience. The right audience will always come along, for sure. And having said that, you're always welcome to Brussels. Please let me know whenever you are coming here, and I will be very happy to see you.
थैंक यू सो मच, एंड सेम गोज फॉर यू इफ यू आर कम टू स्वीडन। और
Perfect.
उम्मीद करता हूँ कि आप लोगों को ये कंटेंट पसंद आया, अगर आपको पसंद आया है तो आप शेयर करें, अपना ख्याल रखें, और अल्लाह हाफिज।
Thank you very much.